I've been absolutely fighting for my life with all the great survival games that are now available on Xbox. I mean, just check this lot out. And for our US viewers, this week's episode is brought to you by Venmo. I'm going to kick off with that game that all your friends have been bugging you to try. It's that one there. Grounded. Playing as a teenager with a severe case of sudden tininess, you're going to need to fend off insects and forage for what you need to survive. You'll craft your own armor, you'll build your own base, and eventually try and figure out a way to get big and go home. And speaking of things getting bigger, well, Grounded 2 is about to take players to a map that is 3 times as large and even more bug infested. And that one's going to be coming day 1 to Game Pass on July 29th. Right, staying alive in the frozen wastelands of the Frostpunk games is a cold, hard business, but the thing that will really chill you to your bones is the decisions that you make along the way. A city management sim and a brutal survival game all wrapped up in one, Frostpunk has you building a society that can survive those Arctic temperatures. And that means, making daring expeditions into the world around you, it means finding a way to feed all your people, and it means doing whatever it takes to keep the heat on. And if that means enforced labour and ruthless tyranny, well, at least they won't be chilly. Frostpunk is available now on Game Pass, and Frostpunk 2, there's a theme here, which makes things a little more democratic and much more challenging, is available now on PC Game Pass with a console version in the works. Yeah, lucky you. With all the time that people spend crafting perfect one-to-one recreations of famous landmarks and yelling chicken jockey, it's easy to forget that Minecraft is also an absolutely stellar survival game. You mine useful resources and then craft useful things with them. It's the world's most satisfying game loop, especially when it's powered by the constant fear of death. Even the most desperately cobbled together shelter will look superb though, thanks to the recent vibrant visuals update, and the game is available now on Game Pass. The Subnautica games take players to an alien planet where they'll have to compete with the most grueling conditions imaginable. Starvation, thirst, oxygen deprivation, ferocious predators, being a bit soggy. The list goes on. But while these far-flung planets aren't the easiest places to live, they are absolutely gorgeous. As you swim and submarine through their watery depths, you'll uncover all sorts of cool creatures and hidden secrets. Subnautica Below Zero makes things even more challenging by turning the water temp way down to decidedly uncomfortable levels, and later this year, Subnautica 2, there it is again, will be coming day 1 to Game Pass later this year with a whole new watery world for us to explore. Now, like a lot of monster catching games, Palworld lets you capture a whole range of colourful creatures and then train them up. Unlike most monster catching games though, it also lets you give them bazookas, industrialise them in the most brutal way imaginable, and even eat them. Anyway, yeah, it's different. And Palworld is available now on Game Pass, and thanks to Xbox Play Anywhere, you can buy the game once and then just bounce between console, PC, and all your other platforms, making it that much easier to keep an eye on your precious monsters, to make sure that you're not burning them on one side. Ah, the British countryside, the rolling green hills, the gently trickling rivers, the flamethrower-wielding killer robots and murderous druids. Okay, so the place might have fallen on hardened times in Atomall. But anyway, it's a survival game that takes place in an alternate version of Northern England, where the whole place has been quarantined and things have gotten weird. If you don't want to end up on the wrong end of a cricket bat, well, you'll need to choose your friends very carefully and keep your wits about you. And a cricket bat of your own isn't a bad idea either. In fact, Atomall's dystopian version of Old Blighty just got even richer with the release of the Wild Isle expansion, and the game itself is available now on Game Pass. Also, I'm in the game, so don't bash my head in, please. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is a survival-oriented FPS that takes players into an irradiated open world that's filled with danger and mystery, but especially danger. Like, possibly a 2-to-1 danger to mystery ratio. Just stuffed with it. You'll have too few bullets and too many enemies every step of the way in this absolutely stunning adventure. But not that you have to solve all your problems with your trigger finger. No, diplomacy is possible, and the whole world can actually change based on the choices you make. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is available now on Game Pass, and thanks to cloud gaming, you can even take the exclusion zone with you wherever you go. Ark Survival Evolved lets players build their very own survivor, and then just drops them into a world full of dinosaurs to see if the term Survivor was an accurate way to describe them after all. You'll craft your way from stone spears to automatic weapons, bit of a step up, tame dinosaurs and then ride them into battle, cooperate with your friends, or fight for resources in brutal online multiplayer. Ark has continued to evolve, with the lovely new Ascended version recreating the whole game in lush Unreal Engine 5 style for Xbox Series X and S players to enjoy, as well as free updates like the recent Ragnarok Ascended, which gives the whole thing a nice Norse spin. Very chic, very IKEA. And of course, there is the small matter of Ark 2, done it again, which will be a day one Game Pass title, so subscribe if you want to keep tabs on that one. But until then, you can check out Ark Survival Ascended on Game Pass now. Green Hell is an open-world survival simulator that will make you wonder why people are always trying to save the rainforest. Frankly, this place sucks. I mean, everything here wants to eat you, the culinary scene is so dire that you'll be scraping around for rotten bananas, hoping they don't give you another tropical illness. Building shelter is an absolute nightmare too, especially one that is strong enough to keep the bigger creatures out. And then there's the fact that you seem to be slowly losing your mind. But if you are a glutton for punishment, in search of a realistic survival game that lets you see every little maggot-sized detail of what it takes to survive in these kind of situations, then abandon all hope and enter Green Hell. In medieval Dynasty, you play as a simple farmer with dreams of leaving behind a lasting legacy. Of course, the thing about legacies is that you need to stay alive long enough to make them, and that was actually quite tricky during this part of history. You need to get your crops sorted, obviously, and build yourself a nice little house to live in. A loving partner and a few little ones will fill the place up nicely, and then it's time to start recruiting other villagers to come live alongside you. Of course, the bigger the community gets, the harder you'll have to work to ensure that everyone makes it through the winter, because make no mistake, winter is coming. But if you reckon you're up to the challenge, Medieval Dynasty is available now on Game Pass. If you've played some of the other games on this list and you've lived to tell the tale, you're probably really tough, but Rust is the perfect way to really put your survival skills to the test. In this hardcore multiplayer survival game, there is no such thing as safety. You start with nothing and have to scramble for food, water, and something pointy to fend off all these hungry animals with. Although they're a walk in the park compared to the threat you'll face from other players. A very scary walk in the park, but, you know, get over it. Of course, if you trust another player, you can work together and pull your resources together and work to keep each other safe, but honestly, in a game like Rust, that is a very big if. You might have thought a game like No Man's Sky, which launched with some 18 quintillion procedurally generated planets for players to explore, would have been quite happy to just leave it there. Yeah, we're good. We've filled it enough content. Fine. But turns out the game has continued to expand in some pretty wonderful ways over the years. The star-hopping survival game went multiplayer in 2018 and ramped up its base building capabilities in 2019. It then came to Game Pass and added crossplay in 2020, along with some dope new robot battling combat. And then by 2021, we were running our own settlements and scooping up space critters to act as our companions. In 2022, we got really into smuggling, and we're all about spaceship battles in 2023. Then we started building our very own spaceships in 2024, and this year we got the chance to run a whole community full of robots, which that's always been my personal dream. Basically, there's never been a more interesting time to blast off into No Man's Sky. Don't starve is possibly the best bit of advice I've ever given on this channel, but turns out it's also really useful advice for survival games, like this one, called Don't Starve. Playing as a scientist who finds themselves trapped in a world that kind of looks like a Tim Burton fever dream, you'll get to see how many days you can keep your character alive and uninsane while surrounded by all manner of supernatural nasties. The Giant Edition of Don't Starve adds in all sorts of lovely extra content, and all of that supports Xbox Play Anywhere, so you can continue not starving on all your Xbox platforms after buying the game on any one of them. Raft gives players the full Life of Pi experience as they try to stay alive while stranded out at sea on a tiny wooden boat, which it turns out is pretty difficult even when you're not sharing your ship with hungry tigers and overwrought religious metaphors. As you float around, you can use your hook to reel in some fish to eat and whatever else floats by, craft new tools and upgrade your raft as you go. And if you do see something really good out there, you can even hop into the water and swim over to get it. Just remember though, you're not the only thing swimming out there. The The Long Dark is a first-person survival game that puts you right into the wet, cold shoes of a pilot stranded in the Canadian wilderness. As they try to find a way home, they need to keep one eye on their calorie intake, fatigue level, and body temperature, and the other one looking for exactly where that awful howling sound is coming from. The cool thing about The Long Dark is that it features both hardcore survival modes where your only goal is to stay alive, and then a narrative-driven story mode where you can also enjoy some lighter survival elements as you play through an engaging episodic story. You're going to be cold either way though, so bring a jacket. Available now on Game Pass, This War of Mine is a side-scrolling survival game, which is a little bit different, about a group of civilians trapped inside a war zone. With snipers everywhere, you can only venture out at night, and even then, you're far from safe. Each new survivor you encounter could represent a new friend or a new threat, and the game constantly has the player making impossible choices. It's a survival game about the things you do to stay alive and about the things you've done afterwards. As well as being an extremely moving experience, This War of Mine showed that 11-bit studios really are great at this whole survival game thing, and they proved it again with their latest one. It's a day one addition to Game Pass, and of course it's The Alters, and it's one of 2025's most critically acclaimed games, and it's just an ingenious new take on the survival genre. Sure, you've probably already played a game where you have to get your crew to survive on a dangerous alien planet while looking for a way home. But have you ever played one where the rest of your crew are all alternate versions of you? Didn't think so. There's endless fun to be had in The Alters, just cooking up alternate versions of yourselves, seeing how key life decisions turn them into like distinctively different people, and then just try to corral them all into working together. And if you happen to look a bit like the main character in real life, it's also a great way to see how you'd look with different hairstyles, or a moustache, or glasses, something less radical. Inspired by Norse mythology, Valheim is a survival game that takes place in a procedurally generated world so that you never know what it's about to throw at you, just that it's probably going to be very scary. Vikings loved a good group activity, and Valheim also lets you team up with up to 9 of your hardiest friends to go exploring together, both on foot and at sea. You can craft new weapons and armor to help fend off the monsters, as well as engaging in some more peaceful pursuits like farming and even potion brewing. There's even this really unique food system where you can't starve, but you do get certain combat buffs based on what you stuffed your face with, all of it just feels very Viking-y. If you went for a wander through the zombie-strewn lands of 7 Days to Die back when the game first came out, you actually might want to take another pass, because the game has expanded and improved massively since then. These days, the open world survival game features a whole range of different map sizes, over 500 different crafting recipes, and over 1,000 different crafting blocks for you to build your fort with, including the ability to add electricity, traps, and turrets. There are 700 unique locations to explore and tons of different zombie types lurking around them, and over 100 books you can read to pick up some new zombie slaying skills. Oh, and yeah, there's also a ton of cosmetics on offer now as well, so you can spend those 7 days looking pretty damn dapper. Enshrouded is the sort of fantasy tale where the odds of a happily ever after just get worse by the minute. Set in a world of thick fog and deadly monsters, this third-person game lets players whip up a character who they can slowly build into a classic archetype like a barbarian or a wizard. You can then even team up with up to 15 other players to make sure that you've got all your bases covered, and you also get to travel around using a grappling hook, which is not really related to the other things I said, but it's pretty cool, right? Enshrouded is available now in early access form on PC, with the full version coming later this year to both PC and console. Conan Exiles is another one of those games that has gone on an Arnold Schwarzenegger-esque bulk up since it first launched all the way back in 2018, to the point where the version that now stands before us is just a hulking beast of a survival game. As well as the scorching desert where you start out, it also now includes frozen wastelands, rolling volcanoes, all sorts of other biomes, all of which are equally deadly. Not a pleasant meadow or a cute little village in sight, so don't worry about that. Conan Exiles is also full of ferocious creatures, some of which you can now tame and mount, as well as human companions who are now fully voiced and a whole lot more talkative. Basically, there's never been a better time to be a loincloth-clad barbarian. Not in public, and the game is Xbox Play Anywhere compatible, so you'll never feel like you've been exiled unless you wear a loincloth in public. How about a slightly gentler take on the genre? Yeah, let's give Astroneer a little go. This is a colourful sandbox game that does have players monitoring their oxygen while they're bobbing around various planets, so it is a survival game by definition, but the focus here is much more on creativity and exploration. The oxygen bit is still kind of important though. You'll use your terraform tools and reshape the world around you and then go barreling across it in a handcrafted buggy or rover, or just using your trusty jetpack. The further you travel, the more resources you find and the more neat stuff you'll be able to build, all of which makes for just a lovely little game loop. Astroneer is available on Game Pass and supports both streaming and Xbox Play Anywhere, so you're always just a few clicks away from blasting into space again. We all want to know how we'd survive with our friends in a zombie apocalypse, and now we can live out that fantasy with State of Decay 2. It's a third-person survival game that lets up to 4 of you take on the horde together. You're going to build your base and then find creative ways to zombie-proof it. You'll head out into the world to gather resources, rescue other survivors, then figure out how to use their particular set of strengths and weaknesses to your advantage. Just know that these are 28 Days Later style fast zombies, by the way, not them brain munchers of old. So whatever you're doing, do it quickly. The Juggernaut edition of State of Decay 2, which includes all of the DLC content and gives the whole thing an audio-visual overhaul, is available on Game Pass, and State of Decay 3, that's a new one, will be joining it there day one in the future. I'm sure I've probably left someone's favourite survival game out on this list, so let me know what they are down in the comments. I'll give it a go and let you know if it's any good. Alright, see you in the next one. Bye. And for our US viewers, this week's episode is brought to you by Venmo. With the Venmo debit card, our US viewers can Venmo everything you might need to survive, whether it's pizza, headphones, or even an Xbox. To find out more, just visit venmo.me/debit.
Here they come, yo. Here they come. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. I think you Venmo this, yo.
Get the Venmo debit card and get up to 15% cash back.